Welcome back to Super Tuesday coverage from the Oklahoman. Good evening, I'm Dave Morris from the Oklahoman's video studio. Super Tuesday coverage of election 2016. Throughout the night, we'll be live on newsok.com, probably till after 10 o'clock tonight, speaking with various reporters who are headed out to the watch parties. They've filed their stories from earlier today from the voter turnout and from the polls that they went to. Now they're headed out to the various watch parties. We will be checking in with them throughout the night. Kelly Dyer-Fry, editor of the Oklahoman, will join us shortly. We'll catch up again with Owen Canfield and Chris Castile for their political perspective and analysis. But right now, we're joined again by Phil O'Connor over here at the news desk. And we're also joined by Pat McFerrin and Bill Shepard. Bill Shepard of SoonerPoll.com fame. Pat McFerrin of Cole Hargrave, Snodgrass and Associates. Gentlemen, thank you for your time and good evening. Phil, we're seeing new results about maybe over 25% of the precincts reporting at this point.
Yeah, and I'm going to turn to these guys because both of them, I think, are a little shocked by what they're seeing. So talk a little bit about it, what you expected and what we're seeing.
Well, I think we both thought heading out at least a week ago, when I think we were probably both in the field, that we saw Trump with a sizable lead in this election, and so to see him running second here behind Cruz is a little shocking here. That it is still a little bit early, but I'll tell you, when we get another 100 or so precincts here, it's going to set in, and I don't have the numbers in front of me about what the turnout is. I think there was also conventional wisdom that a larger turnout was going to help Trump, and all accounts I've seen, it was a very large turnout, and if these numbers hold, that's just not the case.
Yeah, I mean, all three of the last polls that were done, including ours two and one other, all showed Donald Trump by about a double-digit lead. And so, but as we look at these numbers, I mean, Ted Cruz had an operation on the ground. Obviously, Donald Trump did not. Marco Rubio stuck with high-level endorsements, and Bernie Sanders also had people on the ground. I mean, I think he identified Oklahoma as a state that he thought he could do well, and he brought an operation here. He spent some money. He's been here several times. And I think that's what's making the difference in that race particularly. And
you guys have both said we need to be cautious about saying anything too early. We got a lot of precincts that are still out. I'm just seeing Chris Castile sent something here that says with 10% of Oklahoma County in, Clinton has 59%. So if she seems to be doing very well in Oklahoma County, yet if we're looking at these early returns, she seems to be behind statewide by a sizable margin.
And the conventional wisdom is that Hillary Clinton would have done better in the rural areas and Bernie Sanders done better in more of the urban areas. I mean, keep in mind for Democrats that 1 in 3 Democrats in the state is in the 2nd district. And that's where also the most high concentration of conservative Democrats are. In our polling, that's the ones that were most undecided. And so the conventional wisdom is will a rural conservative Democrat vote for a 74-year-old white socialist? I have a tough time believing that.
Well, my polling's a little bit different there, but I want to go back to one thing you talked about, 10% of Oklahoma County being in. This is one of the things that it matters where the election board is. When you talk about Oklahoma County, it's the election boards in the northeast part of the city tends to be the first precincts in are the northeast, which tend to be predominantly minority, where I think people would expect Hillary Clinton to do well. Now, our polling showed, now I haven't looked at the Democrat primary in quite some time, as you know, but when we saw it, we had Clinton with universal name recognition, but unable to break 40%. And we were seeing that Sanders was doing well among people that ideologically were opposed to him, just because they had such disdain for the Clinton name.
Regardless of what happens, if Sanders, he's won Vermont today, I mean, is there still a path forward for him from out of this, regardless of what happens in Oklahoma? I mean,
I don't think so. I mean, the Democrat Party at the national level has a superdelegate process, which basically means that some people have more votes than the electorate has. I mean, that
is the irony of all ironies, that a socialist might be defeated by someone that's more equal than others. So
that's right. But I think that that's the reason why they do that. In all honesty, the Democrats might have the last laugh because it looks like the Republicans may be stuck with Donald Trump and not want him and not have the superdelegates to overrule that.
Yeah, the difference here, the only chance for Sanders is if he can stay in as long as he can, he has to get to where he's hoping for something extraordinary, an indictment, something like this, which make the superdelegates then decide to change and flip what they're going to do.
And Pat, we sort of heard that because he raised significant money in the past month and indicated he's going to stick around in the race.
No, not unlike, I think Ron Paul did with the Republicans in the past, when it was beyond the ability to do it, to stay, to help build that brand, to do whatever else you want to do. And I think with Clinton, you've got something a little different that you're worried about. Is there another shoe to drop? Is there some other issue there that would create an opening?
Certainly, I do not think, though, that an Obama administration, an Obama Justice Department will hand down any kind of indictment on their leading candidate for the presidential nomination.
No, it's a long shot. I agree, but I think if you're a Sanders supporter, if you're Bernie Sanders, that's your justification for staying in and keeping the fight going. Okay. Especially if you win a state like Oklahoma, and I haven't seen what West Virginia's doing tonight.
I think the conventional wisdom before tonight was that Donald Trump would take the Republican side, and that the real fight here in the battle was for second place. Looking at it now, again, it's early, but if it is the battle for second place, which I'm not sure it is at this point, but talk a little bit about the Republican field and what we see here.
Well, I would say that, Marco Rubio should have performed better tonight. I mean, with some of the endorsements that he had, you would have anticipated that would have helped people trying to make up their minds between the top three. Ted Cruz, again, had an operation, and when I look at both of those leaders and go, why is Bernie Sanders leading? Why is Ted Cruz leading? I think it's because both of them put a substantial operation into the state, and we both know as pollsters, individual, personal contact makes a difference.
Well, and I actually would take another, I'm not disagreeing with anything you said there. The other thing is, I'd encourage everybody to go look at the television logs and the advertising logs that have happened. Ted Cruz bought more advertising. The Ted Cruz PAC did more advertising. They did more in Oklahoma than anybody has. So the thought that, you're always getting people saying, oh, TV's no longer there because of DVRs and everything. I think this proves that's probably not the case. I think when we go back and look at this, we're going to see that he was able to move the numbers in the last week. I think television had a lot to do with that, the other advertising they've done.
Right. One of the interesting things is I think we've heard that Marco Rubio is doing best in Tulsa County, which is kind of interesting because Bridenstine, the congressman from that district, endorsed Ted Cruz and probably had more of an operation there to help Ted Cruz in that one. Whereas we're hearing Ted Cruz is doing the best in Oklahoma County, which again kind of runs contrary to maybe conventional wisdom.
Conventional wisdom also was that Cruz would do well here in Oklahoma because of the evangelical vote. Pat, you and I were on a program, we were talking, and it was interesting in that all the voters that we've been speaking to leading up to this election, the wedge issues that have traditionally been part of sort of the traditional playbook, none of those have been raised. That just don't seem to be an issue at all this time. Gay marriage or marriage equality, all those types of things.
We do see that for 14 to 15% of the Republican primary electorate. Those are still the vital issues: the abortion, the same-sex marriage, these kind of issues.
But are they?
And we saw Cruz doing really well among that group.
But do you sense those are as big an issue in this election cycle as they've been in previous election cycles? Or
no, but just to that 13 or
issue?
14%. We've been able to, with the new platforms, the way people are communicating, the self-selection of their own news cycle, they're able to silo themselves more. So you don't see it if you're not within that group. You don't see that messaging as much. But the campaigns are all sophisticated and able to communicate to their group, to their individuals, what their messages are.
What would a win for Cruz coming out of Oklahoma mean?
Well, I think it would mean that with that and in Texas, he could make a play that I've won now 3 states. Rubio, you haven't won any, and so you need to get out of the race because that's the only way that we're going to beat Donald Trump. And so, but I could see Marco Rubio then saying, hey, Florida's coming up. I know I'm behind, but if I win Florida, that still gives me a path to getting enough delegates to beat Donald Trump.
No, actually, I think if you look at it nationwide, a Cruz win here might actually help Trump because I think it keeps both Rubio and Cruz in this race for a longer period of time as long as Florida's there. Mm-hmm. Because they both then still try to make the claim that I'm the alternative to Trump. And I think that they both say the other one has to get out for there to be a real chance of stopping.
Sure, but the longer the both of them stay in,
right,
the more support that Donald Trump will always have and more delegates he will win. And so,
yeah, if they're both still in when we get out of the proportional states, and then I think it's a pretty foregone conclusion already, quite frankly. But it's really over then.
I would agree, but we're really going to know probably March the 16th. Florida has to happen, and then all of it is downhill probably from there. There may not be enough delegates for anybody to amount a comeback at that point.
I'm just curious. Let's look in the real crystal ball. So say it is Trump and Clinton. I know you haven't done any polls on that yet, I'm sure, but thoughts? Who do you think it would be?
Well, Oklahoma's already decided. It's a Republican state. I don't see that the state would go for.
No, I've got Trump up by 21. I've got Rubio up by 23 against either Sanders or Clinton. That's Well, it's been since 1964 that we haven't voted for the Republican, and we won't see it, we won't see any candidates here or them buying the advertising they bought during the primary during the general election.
Are you guys surprised? Are you guys surprised at the amount of attention that we have gotten? I mean, we had a lot of presidential visits, candidates visit the state in the last couple of days.
Yeah, I think it's been good for our state, and I think one of the reasons is that being a proportional state has helped, because I don't think Bernie would have come here and spent the time of money and time on the ground had he not thought that he could at least pick up some delegates because of the proportional. I think Bernie Sanders, of any people, might be surprised that he wins Oklahoma tonight, because I don't think that far out, looking at 28% in the polls, and is where I had him at least 2 months ago. You may have had something similar, I don't know. But the point is that basing your entire campaign on coming to Oklahoma and saying, I'm going to win it, probably wasn't, I'd like to be a fly on the wall.
Well, my intel's a little bit different on that, is that they did pick Oklahoma, the campaign structure did there, because they wanted to be able to say we could win in the South. And if you talk about the South, and when the African-American vote is so locked against you in other places, we're the only southern state where you have an opportunity.
Well, and that's only because then the Democrat electorate does not have a large African-American contingent, whereas the other southern states do have that. So that's where he saw the opportunity if he was going to win a state down here.
It's a good conversation, and a conversation will continue throughout the night, part of our live election coverage here in the Oklahomans video studio. You're watching live on newsok.com. Pat McFerrin, Bill Shepard, that gentleman there, Phil O'Connor. They will all be back at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock as we continue our live streaming throughout the night. We're going to stop down here for just a second. When we come back, we'll visit some watch parties and some political science experts to take a look at the numbers that are coming in as we're getting close to about half the precincts reporting. Stay with us here on newsok.com.